Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the MIPIM community here in Cannes, but not only in Cannes, because we are right now live streamed. So normally, if we have mainly European delegates in Cannes today, we have people from Asia, America, and elsewhere in the world looking at us, watching at us on their computers. So welcome to everyone. I'm delighted, to be honest, to be with you today. It is the opening of MIPIM. Maybe some of you were there yesterday night. But to be honest, since 2 years and a half without MIPIM, because last time we did close MIPIM was in March 2019, and who could imagine that we will have such a strange with this pandemic, of course. So we are delighted to welcome you back. Clearly, our ambition as MIPIM was to welcome the real estate and the built environment community as soon as the sanitary conditions would be reasonable, let's say. So welcome to MIPIM, welcome to Cannes, and for those who are not in Cannes but behind their computer, welcome to you as well. We'll miss you, guys, but maybe you will be with us in March 2022, hopefully. So today we are launching, of course, the theme of this MIPIM September edition, New World, New Era, Time to Reconnect. And we wanted to focus on three main pillars, which are the pillars, of course, of the sustainable development: people, planet, and performance. So let's start today by planet. If you remember well, in March 2019, we did welcome the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, and he told us at that time there is no planet B. Who could imagine maybe that a few months after we will shut down, the world with the pandemic, etc. So today will be much more positive, and to open this conference program even, we are delighted to welcome Bertrand Piccard. And Bertrand, I'm sure, will share with you a very fruitful and insightful speech about, of course, sustainable development and how it can be powerful, how it can be efficient. But before asking him to join the floor, could you please share with us a small movie? Have a very nice day. Enjoy your stay in Cannes.
Every dream in history was considered impossible until it had been accomplished. Behind each achievement, explorers have invented the future by going beyond the frontiers of certainties. They have broken the rules, challenging common assumptions to discover new solutions. Today, solving the environmental crisis seems out of reach. We need the same pioneering spirit that has in the past allowed mankind to achieve the impossible. This is how we will find the solutions to change the world. Bertrand Piccard, the visionary behind Solar Impulse, wanted to demonstrate the incredible potential of renewable energies and clean technologies. Solar Impulse was built to carry this message around the world.
Hello, Solar Pulse. Hello, Captain Piccard. I am inspired by your pioneering spirit.
You know, Mr. Secretary General, if an airplane like Solar Impulse can fly day and night without fuel, the world, of course, can be much cleaner.
Hotel India Bravo, turning final, 0 to right. More than an achievement in the history of aviation, Solar Impulse has made an achievement in the history of energy. Let's take it further!
What can be done in the sky can be done on the ground. Replacing old and polluting infrastructure by modern and efficient technologies is logical as much as ecological. convinced the protection of the environment will become a reality only if it's economically viable, Bertrand Piccard has launched the second phase of his action, committing the Solar Impulse Foundation to identify 1,000 solutions that can protect the environment in a profitable way. Developed by startups and corporates, these solutions reduce pollution and improve efficiency in the fields of water, energy, construction, mobility, industry, and agriculture for a better quality of life. Assessed by independent experts and labeled by the Solar Impulse Foundation, they represent the market opportunity of the century, generating jobs and clean growth. In the near future, Bertrand Piccard will travel around the world again to present this unique selection of solutions with one goal: encourage governments, businesses and institutions to go beyond compromise and set more ambitious environmental targets and energy policies. Here again, the spirit of exploration has a role to play in achieving what many people still consider impossible. And you can be a part of it.
Good morning to everyone. I know very well that you are not here to learn how to fly a solar-powered airplane. But I'm sure that, like me, you have big challenges to solve. It can be personal, professional, global, like climate change, like making sustainable constructions. And maybe like me, you have noticed that each time that we want to change something in the system, each time we bring new ways of thinking, there are a lot of people who answer, it's impossible. And when we ask, but why is it impossible? The answer usually is the same. Because it has not been done like this before. And this is the most stupid answer we can ever get, because it should be exactly the other way around. It's precisely because something has not yet been done that we have to try. Otherwise, it will always remain impossible. But how can we try? How can we be successful in something completely revolutionary? And I think here it's important to understand the weight of our certitudes, of our habits, of everything we have done before that give us the impression that the future will be an extrapolation of the past. But it's wrong. The future is unpredictable and requires from us to be disruptive. And disruptive means to analyze very precisely everything we have learned and try to do differently. And I'm going to give you a few examples of that. When the father of my grandfather installed the first telephone in Switzerland, end of the 19th century, he was a professor in the university. Can you please put the picture on the screen? He was a professor at the university and made a demonstration. And all his colleagues there told him, it's very nice, but it has no future. Why that? These people were not stupid. But the paradigm in those days was telling that if you wanted to use a telephone, you need to pull a cable between two people. So to make it global, you need to pull cables between every house and every other house of the world, even houses of people you don't know today, because maybe one day you will need to call them. It means billions and billions and billions of cables everywhere. You could not even see the sky. What was the paradigm change? The invention of the operator. The operator receiving just one cable from every house and connecting people together. So it's interesting to see that the guy who made the revolution in telecommunication is not the one who invented the telephone. He's the one who changed the paradigm to make it a reality. When we see the big exploration feats of the 20th century, it's exactly the same. Walking on the moon, climbing the Everest mountain, flying in the sky. What was the paradigm change? Because, you know, those were not new ideas. They were dreams of humankind for thousands of years. And suddenly they happened. because something has changed. And maybe you will tell it's a paradigm change in technology. Yeah, of course, I would agree for the moon landing, but for nothing else. The first airplane was built with wood and cloth, meaning the Egyptians could have flown from the top of the pyramids 5,000 years ago. Why didn't they do it? Because it was prohibited by the mythology. Only the gods were allowed to fly. And when Leonardo da Vinci, during the Renaissance, built flying models that could have flown, it's proven scientifically today, but he was not stupid enough to try them. He would have been tortured and burned by the church. The Nepalese, the Tibetans, they saw the Everest for centuries, but it was prohibited to profanate the holy mountain. So what happened in the beginning of the 20th century? Explorers broke the rules. And that's the role of explorers, to break the rules. Explorers are people who are not satisfied with what they have, with what they see. They want it different, they want it better. And this is how, in 66 years, which is really short in the history of humankind, 66 years only, you have the first airplane, you have the South Pole, the North Pole, the Everest Mountain, the Mariana Trench, and the Moon. Showing what? Showing that innovation does not come when we have a new idea. Innovation comes when we let go of old beliefs. And then we have the spirit empty enough to welcome something new. I went through exactly the same type of experience when I wanted to fly around the world non-stop in a balloon. People told me, you know nothing about ballooning. You will never succeed. Because the balloon who has flown the longest has flown 6 days, and the wind takes 3 weeks to go around the globe. So you cannot do it. Of course, that's the paradigm. Now what is interesting is to change the paradigm. And we made another type of balloon, which was having a gas cell in the middle, but hot air burners in the bottom to heat up the helium during the night, so we could triple the duration of the flight. And we made the longest flight ever, 45,000 kilometers and 20 days non-stop. But that was the maximum possible with this paradigm. Because when we landed, as you see here with the level of frost in the last fuel tank, there was 40 kilos left of fuel from the 3.7 tons of the takeoff. So when you hear that the sky is the limit, it's wrong. The sky is not the limit. The fuel is the limit. And this is when I thought, I've done the maximum that was possible with the paradigm of this type of balloon. Now let's make something different and change the paradigm. Destroy completely the paradigm of fuel and try to fly around the world without fuel. And that was the dream of Solar Impulse. An airplane that could fly forever, receiving energy from the sun, running electric motors, charging batteries for the night in order to spend the night in the air, reach the next sunrise, and continue. Breaking another paradigm that was saying that solar energy only works during the day. So I had this picture made by an artist on a computer, and I had to find a team, a sponsor, a constructor for the plane. And the first thing I've done, of course, was to go see airplane constructors. And they looked at me and said, it takes 1 minute to calculate that the sun does not give enough energy to have an airplane flying day and night. Okay, but this is the normal paradigm we always hear in our world. We only speak in terms of production, of quantity, not of efficiency and saving. We are like a stupid man in a bathtub with a leak in the bathtub. And instead of solving the leak, we open the tap wide open to add water to compensate the leak. This is what the world is doing today with energy, with resources, with everything. This is why we're such in a trouble today. So basically, what we had to do was going from the paradigm that we don't produce enough to the paradigm where we are so efficient that it could work nevertheless. And this is the work we've done in the following 3 years. That was not 2 minutes to calculate. It was 3 years to have the concept of an airplane that was efficient enough. That means 72-meter wingspan, bigger than a jumbo jet, 236 feet, but lighter than a family car. So, of course, everybody thought it was impossible, and the world of aviation absolutely refused to deal with that. And we felt in the beginning exactly like Dumbo. You remember Dumbo, the poor little elephant with the ears so big they were trailing on the floor? We were exactly like that, with big wings, gigantic wings that nobody wanted to build. And this is a normal moment. If you have the dream of your life and everybody tells you it's easy, it just means you're not ambitious enough. But when everybody tells you it's impossible, it's a fantastic moment because you think, wow, here I have something really great. And this will attract a lot of talents, a lot of innovators, in order to try to achieve what nobody thought was possible. And at this moment, you need to remember that if Dumbo became the hero of the circus, it's because he used his problem. He used his handicap. He deployed his ears and could fly. So we had to deploy our wings in order to do it. But to give you an order of magnitude of the challenge, the structure of the plane had to be 10 times lighter, not 10%, 10 times lighter than the best sailplane, the best glider in the world, proportionally to the size, of course. So this is why everybody thought it was impossible. And we had to find someone to build the plane who did not know it was impossible. And that was a shipyard. When I'm saying that they didn't know it was impossible, it's not to repeat the joke of Mark Twain, but it's just to remind you that when we don't know that something is impossible, we don't have the filter that prevents us to see what we don't know, that reinforces what we already have learned. We're just open. And the guy at the shipyard told us, yes, I've built Alinghi for the America's Cup, winning twice for Switzerland. I can make your airplane as light as you want. And then we were happy. We went back to our team, and the team said, are you crazy or what? We cannot work with a shipyard who never made an airplane. And it took about 2 years to make 1 and 1 equal 3. The shipyard, our team, and the third experience of building completely differently a new airplane with carbon fiber. And it worked. It worked. We had the first prototype, then we had the second prototype that was ready to fly around the world. What was interesting, nevertheless, is the fact that absolutely no one from the world of aviation and energy wanted to be part of the sponsoring of the project. And in the beginning, I have to say, I was a bit disappointed to have nobody in the specialized world interested by this airplane. But this is normal. It's not the people who have been selling candles who invented the light bulb. It's completely other people. For the world of automotive, it's exactly what happened. It was not a car manufacturer that built the first successful electric car. It's a billionaire from the world of internet. And he took what he knew, that means a computer screen, and built a Tesla around it. And now all the official brands are running behind to have a part of the market share. So who was innovative enough to be with us? Insurance companies, chemical industry, elevator like Schindler, telecommunication, Swisscom, Google. We had champagne brand, but I have to say that was more for the team than for the plane. But what is really interesting is to see that people who were out of the aeronautical system were clever enough to make possible something that was considered to be impossible. And it shows how much important it is to think outside of the straight line. We are born and raised to think like that in a straight line because we hate the doubts and the question marks. We want statistically reproducible facts. We want to be in control of everything. So we don't learn to look left and right because we don't want to be challenged by things we don't understand. So we go straight ahead, and in the beginning it works. And as soon as we hit an obstacle, we crash. And then we think, why is life so bad with me? Instead of asking, why am I not ready for life? So it's important to understand how to get ready for life. We get ready for life as soon as we understand that there is not just one way to think, one reality, one paradigm, but there are thousands of different ways to think, thousands of different realities, of different truth for different people, and we have to explore them all. So we need to open the way, and we need to see where they go, with the risk of failing. Sometimes we fail because we take a road that is maybe not the best one, and then we try another one until we succeed. Because failing is not the worst. The worst is when we don't try. And it's fascinating to see that we have in front of us all the options, but we disregard them for just taking the one that we already know. This is why I love ballooning. Because ballooning is not a sport, it's a philosophy of life. In a balloon, you are pushed by the wind, in the direction of the wind, at the speed of the wind, exactly like we are in life by the winds of life. By the political decisions, the economical rules, the financial crash, the pandemic, accidents, love, failure, rupture, crisis. All this is like the wind. Takes us by surprise, pushes us toward the unknown. So if we hate the unknown, our life's going to be a nightmare. So how do we explore all the possible directions? Exactly like in a balloon. In a balloon, you need to change altitude to find another layer of wind that has a better direction. And in life, it's what we have to do. Changing altitude psychologically, philosophically, spiritually, in order to find other influences, other visions of the world, other solutions, answers, strategies that will help us to have a different trajectory. But for this, we need to drop ballast, like in a balloon. Drop weight, go through the atmosphere, write down in your logbook all the different directions for every altitude, and then you have the vision of the future in front of you. Very reliable. You know for each altitude which direction you'll have. And in life, you can do the same. Because in life, we can drop ballast. We can drop certitudes. We can drop habits, paradigms, dogmas. And each time we drop something of a certitude, we are open to monitor, to explore, to find, to discover another direction. It means that we have to be ready to envisage exactly the opposite from everything we have always learned. Because between our certitudes and the unknown, there are thousands of different ways to do and to think. Exactly like on a firework. Life can be a firework. For every situation, you have lines going everywhere. And we have to identify the one that goes in the direction we wish. We can do that professionally, privately, politically, economically, and in the big challenges we have today, like sustainability, I think it's exactly the type of thinking we need to introduce to get out of the huge crisis we're facing. Why that? Because we had a straight line with a lot of certitudes during 50 years. What did we hear? We basically heard that the protection of the environment, the mitigation of climate change, will cost a lot of money, will require a lot of sacrifice, less mobility, less construction, less growth, less comfort. And of course, people don't want less, they want better, which means that there was a huge resistance against the protection of the environment because it was boring and threatening. Why not letting go some ballast, change completely the paradigm, and see if it could be a better direction? So instead of being expensive and boring and threatening, what about saying that protection of the environment can be profitable, exciting, creating a lot of enthusiasm, generating new jobs, and being good for economical growth. Possible or not possible? Well, this is the type of things I was reflecting a lot when I was crossing oceans with Solar Impulse, because they were really long flights, several days and several nights alone in the cockpit in a row. And there were moments I was looking at the sun, just feeling it was my only source of energy, and I could fly forever, day and night. And there were big propellers left and right of the cockpit. There was no noise, no pollution, no fuel. And I promise you, there's a moment I thought, that's unreal. I'm in a dream. I'm like movie, propelled into the future. But not at all. It was not the future. It was the present. It was what the technologies of today allowed me to do today. And that was like a revelation, because at this precise moment, I really became aware that if I am not in the future, it's the rest of the world that is in the past. The rest of the world is completely in the past, with combustion engines that have a maximum of 27% of efficiency, when my engines had 97% of efficiency running electric. We're in the past with constructions and buildings that are not well insulated, losing energy like hell, with inefficient heating, cooling, and lighting systems, with old industrial processes, with dirty ways to burn fossil energy to have movement, heat, or electricity. Are we proud of that? So we bravely wave our latest smartphone to make believe that we are modern, but everything else we use was invented in the beginning of the oil era 120 years ago. So if we speak about protection of the environment, it's not a question of reducing the lifestyle and the quality of life of people. It's a question of becoming modern. It's a question of changing everything that is polluting to replace it by something that is ecological. If this is expensive, it will ruin the world and nobody will do it. But if it's profitable, then it's the biggest market opportunity of the century. And this is what I wanted to test and to verify. And this is why at the landing of Solar Impulse, the final successful flight from Egypt to Abu Dhabi, ending around the world successfully, the banner in front of the team was oriented toward the future, not just a celebration, because a success should not be a goal in itself. It should be a reward allowing us to go on the next step and being more influential, more credible, and do more in the future, not sit in our armchair and look at the past. So in front of the team, there was this banner, "Take it further." And "Take it further" for us, that was to launch a new challenge at the Solar Impulse Foundation to identify 1,000 technological solutions that could protect the environment and at the same time be economically profitable. Here again, of course, when I launched the challenge, I heard it's impossible. And the most optimistic person told me, you can find 300 of these solutions, but not more. Today, we have 1,260 of these solutions, like you've seen in the film. Systems, processes, devices, technologies, sources of energy, in order to make the world cleaner and more efficient. One representative of this solution is here in the room and told me before the speech that she was coming here to show her system to the construction and real estate industry. And this is important because today, all these technologies are ready, but usually they are in startups and nobody knows about them. Sometimes they're in big corporations and people think, yes, it's marketing, it's greenwashing. But very often it's not just marketing and greenwashing. It is a way to make the world so much more efficient and to go on the track of a qualitative growth. Because what is costing a tremendous amount of money today to our world is the fact that we are inefficient and producing too much just for wasting it. It's the archetype of inefficiency. Because we couple the GDP and the creation of wealth with the quantity of the production, which means that there is a shortage of natural resources, a shortage of energy, but there are huge bills because everything becomes more expensive instead of allowing us to work better with less resources to achieve a bigger goal, which is the definition of efficiency. So today, what I promote is qualitative growth. We are not going into degrowth, like the Greens are saying, because it will bring us to a social chaos. But of course, not going in the so-called illimited growth like today, that brings us to an ecological disaster. No, in the contrary, there is a third way, qualitative growth, where we create jobs and make wealth and money by replacing what is polluting by what is protecting the environment. Each time you can be more efficient with resources, with energy, you will gain money. Of course, there is always this fear of the upfront investment. You need sometimes more capex in the beginning. You need, of course, to invest a little bit more because you're buying something that will be much more profitable during the total time of ownership. And this is what we have to see. If you buy an electric bus, it's more expensive in the beginning than a diesel bus. But over 10 years, you gain $400,000. For the construction, for the real estate, it's exactly the same type of things. It costs a little bit more in the beginning. It's about 10% more to have a sustainable building. You can have, with Holcim, you can have CO2, almost CO2-free cement and concrete. You can use demolition waste as a way to make the concrete. You can have insulation materials. You can have heat pumps. You even have an oil exploitation company, Schlumberger, that is making now a diversification into geothermia to be able to install heat pumps in buildings inside the cities, which was never possible before. All this exists. All this exists. And if you invest, the definition is that you'll get money back. It's not a cost. Everybody believes it's a cost. It's not. It is the most profitable way to have good business today. But it requires some pioneering spirit. You know, why did Schindler come as an elevator company to sponsorize a solar-powered airplane? It's because they wanted to show that their product was the most efficient product. And in America, where we have very little subsidies for public transport, they are winning some public procurement bids just because their exploitation cost is lower because they use less energy. So you see, everything can be like that if only we get out of our habits of looking only at the short term, because the short term is very expensive, and to turn on the long term where we really can make a difference. So you see that even for the people who don't care about the environment, even for the people who don't believe in climate change, it becomes logical as much as ecological to use these new technologies, to use these new sources of energy. It's becoming today the market of the century for the one who have understood that it is like this. The others will miss the train, will miss the plane. So it's very competitive today between the one pioneers and explorers and the one who are afraid to change the paradigms. In other words, and that's the last slide I'd like to show before we can maybe interact a little bit more with Q&A. That's the last picture I did when I flew around the world in the Breitling Orbiter 3 balloon. It's a window of the capsule. It's frozen by the moisture of the night. And on the other side, you have a rising sun. But you will never see the rising sun if you don't first go through the ice. And today, in life, in the world, we're exactly like that. We have ice in front of the future. We have difficulties, we have crises, we have the pandemic. We have a lot of anxiety because of the problems we have. And a lot of people decide that it's better to suffer in the problems they have, they know, and they see, instead of taking the risk of going through the ice, through the problem, changing altitude and dropping ballast to take another direction and to be successful. It's very strange to see how many people are afraid to be successful. How many people prefer to suffer in what they know. So each time that we are faced with big challenges, it's our decision to understand life as something that wants to destroy us or something that wants to challenge us. Do we want to be victims of our fate, or do we want to be explorers and actors of our future? And at this moment we can understand that a crisis that we accept because we want to do something with it, because we want to solve it with new solutions. A crisis like this that we accept and that we use will become an adventure. But the adventure that we refuse will always remain a crisis. And it's up to us to decide on what side we want to be. Of course, we need the courage to overcome our fear of change, because nobody likes very much to change. But fortunately today we can have the confidence, the trust that it's the best business opportunity, that this will create jobs, that this will solve the economical, ecological challenges of our world today. So I hope and I wish for you, in the so important business of real estate, construction and habitat, I wish you the best pioneering spirit. I wish you to be explorers, to use all the solutions that exist today, because they are worth being explored and implemented. Wish you a lot of success and good luck.
Hello there, everyone. I think it's on. Can you hear me? I'm Ed Stocker, Europe editor at Monocle magazine. We don't have a lot of time. I'm going to ask Bertrand a few questions and then throw to you all here. I guess my first question is, you talked about 1,000 solutions that can be clean and profitable. But isn't there also an argument that actually it's the companies that don't change that may actually end up being left behind if they refuse to do so?
Yes, what is strange is that there are pioneers in the industry who are showing what works. And nevertheless, you have a lot of companies who refuse to change and continue to destroy the world and have the risk of disappearing, leaving a lot of unemployment behind, like happened with Kodak, who was unable to see the change. Like will happen with oil companies if they don't make a diversification. So this is where is the responsibility of the pioneers. The industries who are oriented for change and innovation have to ask the governments to push the other one to do the same. Otherwise things will not happen. So I'm sorry to be so much down to earth as being a pilot, but nevertheless, we are in a world where it is still allowed to pollute, where it is still allowed to be inefficient, where it is still allowed to waste the resources. And this is not in our advantage. So the governments have to adapt the regulations to make them as modern as the technologies that exist today. If it's possible to have a zero-energy building, it should be mandatory to build zero-energy buildings. It's good for the environment, it's good for the economy, but it will happen only if the professionals of construction and real estate will ask for it. If the pioneers have the big specialists to tell to the governments, you need to modernize the regulation, the standards, the norms and so on, to push for innovation, then it will happen. Otherwise, the governments will say, no, we don't have enough support. You see, the branch of industry doesn't believe it's possible, and then they do nothing.
You talked about industries' need to think beyond the short term, but obviously there are people here who have to answer to boards have year-end figures to think about, etc., etc. How do you convince companies, CEOs that they need to think beyond that short term and think about the long term? Because arguably we're in this mess globally, not just business and companies, because of everyone's ability to think long term.
You know, it's exactly what happened to the airport of Dallas-Fort Worth. I knew the CEO who wanted to be the first carbon neutral airport in the US. His board said, stop playing with these stupid things. We don't put a penny to be more sustainable. And he said, you're going to earn more money. So the board said, okay, go for it. We don't want to know what you do. We just want the numbers at the end. And he made the airport completely different. For example, instead of producing air conditioning, so cold air during the day, taking the hot air to make it cold, he was freezing some glycol during the night when the electricity was lost anyway because nobody was using it, and very cheap. And during the day, he was circulating this external air in the glycol that was minus 20 centigrade and getting the air conditioning for free. And at the end, the board said, but we make more profit. And the CEO said, I told you. It's exactly what I mean today, you know? And for investment, the money is free today. Don't believe it's expensive to invest. The big ones have negative interest rate. The other one, zero. Some bad guys have maybe 0.5 or 1% interest rate. It's nothing. That's the moment to borrow money because you know that you can pay it back with a lot of profit in the investments for energy efficiency and resource efficiency.
Okay, well, let's take some questions from the floor, as I'm sure lots of people got things to ask. Who's going to go first? Don't be shy.
And doesn't need to be a question. You can put a remark. You don't need to agree. You can criticize what I've said.
About, is this on? Sorry. Yep, you can hear it.
Speak a bit louder.
Okay, your comment just now about pushing governments to change the paradigm. I mean, it has really struck a chord. In the UK, we still have the government charges VAT on reuse of old buildings, whereas if you build a new building, you don't get charged VAT. I'm just wondering, how do you, and a lot of people have been sort of campaigning for this for a long time, but can't break through. Have you got any good examples of where, you know, the pennies dropped for governments? How do we deal with our government to make these massive changes, particularly in the real estate sector?
Yes, usually the governments have to react when the Greens and the youth are demonstrating too much in the street. And then they declare a climate emergency. And then they have to take some measures. And then it goes in the direction of degrowth and limitations and things like that. This is why I say that the industry has to advocate also for the change, but in the direction that supports the economy and not destroys the economy. So it's true that regulations, it's not necessarily a prohibition. And when you speak about the VAT, it's true that a lot of times you have just to adapt the regulation to make it modern in order to make an incentive. In Switzerland, there was a law to tax the CO2. It was submitted to the population in a referendum, like always in Switzerland, and the population refused it because they thought it would be too expensive. And this is the big misunderstanding, because it is not because you tax the CO2 that you're going to spend more money. It's exactly the opposite. If you tax the CO2, it's because CO2 is not only an indicator of climate change, it's an indicator of energy waste. The more CO2 you put in the atmosphere, the more energy you're wasting. So if you oblige the industry to be more CO2 respectful and emit less CO2 because you tax it, you stimulate the industry to be cleaner and to be more efficient, and it makes them more competitive. So this is why we have to really understand the mechanism, and Sweden is a good example for that. Sweden made a completely new regulation about CO2 and social protection, because part of the CO2 tax is redistributed to the population, and they have the highest tax in the world, 125 euros per ton of CO2. And the result is that now in Europe, Sweden is one of the most competitive export industry. It's a big paradox, but it's just a change of altitude, taking another direction once you drop the ballast, saying that we need to be cheaper on the short term. No, cheaper on the short term means more expensive later. And this is what people really have to understand. And the industry has to ask for it. I'm really begging the industry, and we have big industrial partners supporting the Solar Impulse Foundation, and I had their CEOs and chairmen writing an op-ed with me for the Financial Times and for the Monde, where they were asking the governments to take the responsibility to modernize the regulations in order to pull the innovation to the market. Otherwise, solutions like yours will not make it to the market. The startups will just disappear because there will be no need to use their product. We have to create this need.
I think we have time for one final question that's up here, at the back.
When you don't speak, we don't hear you.
I applaud you because it's always a pleasure, Bertrand, to listen to you and to your optimistic point of view. And I was really surprised that when you were saying that huge message for humanity that we were not really able to applaud you. So thank you again for what you did. You're a real change maker, and it's always a pleasure to listen to what you've done and what you are still dreaming for us. So you said that renewable energy is really cheap, and you're right, and it's profitable. And today we are in Cannes for real estate investment and also developers. What would be your advice for them to make sure that they can participate to changing the world and to make sure that it will happen? I didn't introduce myself, sorry, I was like, I'm Myriam Fournier-Cassimi, CEO and founder of Sunji, and we are dreaming with you on solar energy. Thank you so much.
Yes. I think it's clearly the opportunity in such an event to speak about all these things and to show it, to demonstrate it. Today, in half of the world, solar energy is the cheapest way to produce electricity. The cheapest way. Wind is the second cheapest way. And now what becomes expensive is nuclear electricity and fossil energy. This becomes 3-4 times more expensive. So it's true that we still need interconnections, synergy between different sources in order to store the energy. Because the sun doesn't shine at night, the winds don't blow all the time, so you need basically to do like Solar Impulse has done. You store energy. And you have, in the solutions that we have identified, a company who is storing heat in the ground, and it can stay for 4 months. You can have a country like Switzerland producing enough heat with solar panels during the summer in order to put the heat in the ground and use it during the winter. So, of course, it requires to do differently. It requires to sit, look at the solutions, and in every situation, look what we can gain. An electric heater with a resistance uses 4 times more electricity than a heat pump. Oil heating uses twice the energy that you need for a heat pump. If you insulate your building, you cut by 2 your cost of heating. So, of course, all these type of things have to be used one after the other. But it's true that you need some regulations allowing the owner of the building, when he's making a renovation, when he's changing the heating system, when he's putting solar cells on the roof, to recover his investment, because the normal, let's say the people who are renting the flat make the profit, because they divide by 2 or by 3 their energy bill. So a part of this money should be given back to the investor, otherwise the investor will have a cost and not an investment. So you see that it's true that you have to negotiate with all the stakeholders in order to have everyone finding a personal interest in doing it. And today, the technology and the price and the energy sources allow to do that. So we have to do it quickly, because independently of all the financial parameters, we are really in trouble with the climate because things are going much faster than we think.
A lot to think about, and very sadly, we're out of time, but I'm sure everyone can catch up with Bertrand after this and talk to him more. It's been a pleasure, inspiring stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation here. Thank you.